Good morning. How's everyone? Fantastic. I've been sat on the side of the room there this morning, and when everyone got up and stood up and got a round of applause, I thought that was wonderful. I was sat still, and I really wanted an excuse to stand up. So for anyone else who has just remained seated, would you like to stand up for a second, and we can give you a round of applause as well? I saw you two ladies. Congratulations. Is there anyone else? Just the three of us. Okay. I'm Sebastian, and I think that's actually why we're here today, to connect, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be given a voice. I think that's, as humans, very important to us, and I think my story reflects that a little bit. I'm not from here, of course, as you can tell from my accent. I am from Texas. Yeah, that's right. I'm Australian. And when I was 25 years old, I was in Canada, and in the middle of the night, the phone rang. And it was one of those phone calls that no one wants to get. On the other end of the line was a good friend of mine from Sydney, Australia, where I am from. And he broke the news to me that one of my closest friends growing up, a guy called Chris and I had gone to school together, we played rugby together, we surfed together, we drank plenty of beers together. Chris, overnight, at the age of 24 years old, had died. That was the phone call I got. I don't remember the rest of that phone call. I remember putting the phone down, sitting next to it in the middle of the night in Canada, contemplating a lot of these questions that I think we tend to in this situation. You know, why am I here? What is it that I'm doing? Am I happy? Whatever it is I'm doing, does it even matter? And the more I thought about these questions, the more confused I became about everything. But there was a hypothetical in my mind that just popped up. And it allowed me to think a little bit differently, and it was this. If Chris somehow had the foresight to know that he would only ever have 24 years on the planet, would he have lived the same way? Or, given another 24 years, would he have changed a few things? Now, ultimately, I think the question was, did he live with regret? And I never asked him this question, of course, I never got the opportunity to ask him. But I thought about his life. Chris loved his family. He loved his friends. He loved team sport. He liked being a big kid. He liked having a beer or two. Rightly or wrongly, by anyone else's code, Chris lived a life that very much reflected his purpose, his values, his mission. He was authentically himself. It was a life far too short, but really well lived. I don't think he would have changed anything. I then, in the middle of the night, in Canada, sat on the floor next to the phone, asked myself the same question. If today was my last day, could I look back at everything that I had done up to this point and say the same thing, that I wouldn't change anything? Ultimately, was I living with regret or not? And I'd never looked at my life from that perspective before. And almost instantly, I realized I would change everything. I was 25 years old. I had no idea who I was. I didn't know my values. I didn't know what I stood for. In fact, I realized I stood for nothing. I didn't have any meaningful goals. I didn't feel connected to purpose or passion or other people. I was genuinely unhappy. And it took this moment for me to realize it. And I thought, well, if this is true, how do I become happier? And it's a great question, of course, and I didn't know really any better at the age of 25, so I just picked up a piece of paper and a pen, and I began to jot down a list of things that I hoped might make me smile more often. A list of things that I hoped would allow me to connect to people in ways that I hadn't before, myself in ways that I hadn't before, perhaps even this sense of meaning or purpose. And as I gave myself permission to begin this list, one thing turned into 10 to 20 to 50, and sure enough, there were about 100 things on this list. And I decided in that moment, if I'm serious about trying to improve my life, I'm going to drop everything in it, everything to pursue the list. And so I did. I can tell some of you are judging me already, and that's completely fine. The next day, I decided that I would fly to Las Vegas because I'd always wanted to marry a stranger there, which in your country isn't too hard. The short version of the story is I met an exotic dancer called Crystal in a pool of mud, and I proposed to her, and she said yes. And I said, why? And she said, I'm not working tomorrow, which was good enough for me. So I I found this, the Say I Do wedding drive-through chapel. It came with a stretched Hummer, an Elvis impersonator. I don't know any of these people. They just showed up. And so they became the wedding party. It was all going so well until I realized someone crucial to the ceremony didn't turn up. And that was, of course, Crystal, my fiance. I don't know why you're laughing. That is a sad moment for me. And I thought, how am I gonna change? How do I get around this? And so I looked down at the crowd and I just quite genuinely asked, is there anybody else here who would consider marrying me for the day? Please. And would you believe there was somebody? Her name was Shivali. Shivali was the receptionist of my hostel. As it happened, she had always wanted to marry someone for a day as well. She was just looking for someone with fashion sense, I think. And so she hopped on top of this stretched Hummer. Elvis was fantastic. Sort of here in the background, he sang in the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, A Little Less Conversation. The crowd are going crazy in the background. And then he asked us at the end of the ceremony to walk to the end of the stretched Hummer to kiss, to symbolize our lifelong commitment to one another. That was the first and last time we ever touched. Which answers that question you might be wondering. And the answer is no, we didn't. So this was my first check from my list. And, in and of itself, does that change the world? Is that impressive? Is it motivating or inspiring? Does it galvanize positivity and progress in the world? No. It doesn't for you. It did, though, for me. I realized that in this moment that I'd achieved plenty of things before. We all do as we naturally navigate our way through life. This, though, was the first time I'd ever done anything that I really wanted to do. Everything else had been things that other people had said I should do. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course, that's how society works at large. But I'd never, on top of those goals, thought about what was important to me. Taking away all the materialistic elements, Elvis, Las Vegas, etc. Conceptually, this is the first time I had it with absolute intention, regardless of what it might have looked like to anyone else, just followed something that felt good to myself. Sat on top of that stretched Hummer, surrounded by strangers, married to one of them, I felt an instant sense of satisfaction and empowerment in my life that I just hadn't felt before. I felt hugely successful, if you will. But the best part was I was just smiling genuinely for the first time in as long as I could remember. And I thought, if this is the first thing on my list, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep on going. And so I have been. I've been going for just over 17 years now. I've checked off many things from this list. It's been turned into a show and books and all manner of things. But the best part is that it's gone on to impact the lives of millions of people around the world, somehow. This personal quest to find meaning or purpose in the world created a ripple effect very accidentally. And I began to hear from people all around the world sharing with me their stories. People would say, we heard what you were doing, here are my dreams, I've started a bucket list. Those emails over time turned into, I heard about your story, these are now the things that I've done. And over time, those messages turned into, heard about your story, been following you for a while, this is now the impact I've had on the important people in my life. And through all of these messages that I was getting from people around the world over 17 years now, the very clear through line that has completely changed what I personally think about human performance, if you will, is that the biggest things that anyone is achieving, the biggest things that you may achieve in your life, the biggest impact that you might create, the biggest legacy that you might be fortunate enough to leave behind, are not influenced only by your ability or your grit. But from these messages I was getting, the key, the very through line to success was actually the depth of the relationships that people had with the people around them. In other words, yes, we are strong alone, but we are far better together. This idea of coming together is how we unlock limitless possibility. That's why we're in the room. Whether you're on the ingredient side, the equipment side, whether you're a baker, whether you're anyone in between, coming together is clearly the way to forge forward and create this undeniably strong future for ourselves on a personal or professional level. And so I thought what might be fun, instead of me just telling stories up here, it might be interesting to sort of unpack this idea. How do we strengthen community? And I think it starts with focusing on the me, the individual. How do we lead ourselves so we are the best version of ourselves? How do we then ignite the best in the people around us, the you, if you will? And then finally, how do we take that me and you and turn that into this collective sense of us? And I think an interesting place to start the conversation is around this concept of regret. So I'm glad you laughed. So has anyone read this book called Regrets of the Dying? It's by Bronnie Ware. She's an Australian palliative care nurse. And over her storied career, which spanned over decades, in looking after people before they passed on, she would ask each of them the same question. And that question was, what's your biggest regret? And she found that over decades of asking people this question, there were 5 regrets that were far more common than any other, and she wrote a book about it. The first one was this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. The second was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard, which it didn't actually mean just to work less. It meant more so to prioritize our personal goals as much as we tend to with professional goals. The third was, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings, to express myself. Fourth, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends, this idea of connection again. And the last was, I wish I had let myself be happier. When I saw these for the first time, they each resonated with me in a way that didn't make me feel great. But what I have realized, if you really kind of break these down, is that we are completely in control of each of these. For those of you where these resonate at all, this is just simply a choice. Any of these we can action immediately to start improving. And similarly, the people who had been messaging me, telling me of their biggest accomplishments and the biggest impact they had had in the lives of people around them, in or out of the workplace, it became quite clear that there were 4 ingredients, if you will, that they were including in every single day of their lives. The first was a simple one, but it was this idea of expression. People who are really not just meeting their potential, but far exceeding it, were just courageous enough to simply be themselves, to express themselves in every situation, whether it was by themselves, with family, with friends, with colleagues, with peers, with clients. They were just being themselves. The second ingredient for their success seemed to be this idea of agency. Every single day, no matter how small, they were taking action on something that mattered to them. Again, it could be personal, it could have been professional. But they were reminding themselves the truth, which is we have full agency over our response to life. The third was this idea of course, connection. I think connection we tend to think is, it's an outgoing thing. How can I listen to you? What can I do for you? But these people were actually being vulnerable. This is how I need help. Do you have a moment to listen to me for a second? Because I'd like your advice. They were vulnerable. And the fourth piece that these people who are not just meeting their potential but far exceeding it had was this idea of meaning. They felt that everything that they did mattered. It was anchored to a value or a purpose within themselves. And the way that they were incorporating these 4 ingredients into each and every day was by way of a bucket list. What I would call a bucket list. Hands up if you have a bucket list. Am I the only person in the room? I guess, okay, great. And I think, thank you for sharing. That would have been awkward otherwise. I think a bucket list might sound cheesy. So you can just drop the word bucket. It's just a list of things that we deem important to us. I think there's definitely a rebranding that could happen around this. We think bucket list, and we think jumping out of a plane naked, or wrestling a bear naked, maybe. And I think it could be both of those things, but I think the truth is that a meaningful bucket list is simply a list of goals that represent every single aspect of our life. So it can be adrenaline and travel related, of course, but equally it could be romantic love, key relationships, personal development, professional development, contribution, as in giving back to the world. And I think as individuals or families or businesses or this group, if we understand what those basic tenets are, those aspects are, we can then start building a meaningful list on top of that. And as I'm sure we've all felt at some point, whether it's recently or not, when we throw our efforts at goals that we deem important to us, we begin to feel good. There's this idea that dopamine, serotonin is released into the body from the very moment we identify a goal, not even achieving it. Dopamine and serotonin reduce anxiety, regulate depression, allow us to feel a greater sense of self-efficacy, allow us to literally, physically smile more. Serotonin and dopamine are released into the body from the moment we identify a goal. And so the question sort of begs, for me at least, is, well, why do we wait? Why is it that we wait for something generally darker, heavier in our lives to consider something better? Why is that such a common story? It's a very common narrative that we hear in our society. Someone who has gone through something heavy, losing someone close to them, coming close to losing their own life, being diagnosed with, let's call it, cancer, going through a very hard professional transition, or even just heartbreak. And it's these people, and I'm sure there are some in the room, who have gone on to do things that are meaningful in their own lives, that have had an impact on others. Whether it's starting a business, going back to school, saying I love you, having a family, saying I'm sorry, buying a ukulele and learning how to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Why do we typically wait? And the answer is we don't have to. We can learn from the people in our lives who have made a big difference. The number one thing in my life that I'm grateful for are my friends. I'm inspired by all of them. One of them is called Tal, T-A-L, Tal. His story, I think, is worth mentioning. Tal, a very flamboyant flight attendant, in the peak of his health, at 32 years old, went to the doctors for what he thought was a routine checkup. The doctor found something. A few tests later, Tal got asked to go back in for a face-to-face conversation with his doctor, who broke the news to Tal that he had a very aggressive stage 4 cancer. That was incurable. Tal, at 32 years old, was told he had 6 months to live, and that there was nothing the doctors could do about it. The doctor said to Tal, I'm so sorry, we can't help you. We just suggest you say your goodbyes to your family and friends. At 32, Tal, driving home, processing this awful news, decided that he wouldn't just go home and say goodbye to people for his last 6 months. He would take life by the horns and prioritize the number one goal that he had always put to one side. And for Tal, it was to go on a global shopping spree. That was number one on his bucket list. All our lists are different. The only issue for Tal was that he had no money. And so, instead of going straight home, he actually stopped off at 4 different banks on the way home and applied for 4 separate credit cards, which he got within 2 weeks. He told me it's very easy to do that in your country. And then 2 weeks later, he took off for a global shopping spree as a 32-year-old with 6 months left to live. And he went everywhere. Milan, Tokyo, Paris, Sydney, London, maybe Hawaii, just buying shorts, suits, shoes, jewelry, watches, cravats, bow ties, hats, everything and anything he wanted for his last 6 months as a 32-year-old. Tal accumulated a debt of $90,000. Oh, to be so lucky to know how much time we have left, to therefore then be able to just put our efforts into the things that make us feel alive. The only issue for Tal was that he survived. He's now in his 60s. He's healthier than ever before. It is a heroic story, but he is in huge debt still. Huge debt, but he is impeccably well dressed at every event he goes to. What a story. And as he was telling me this story, I was so curious, like, what was the thing that allowed him to do his goal? What was the unlock? Was it the fact that he had a physical cancer in his body? And clearly it wasn't. As he went on to explain what he actually did, it became clear that there were just 3 things that he did, which I think apply to all of us with regards to achieving any goal. Number 1, he just became extremely clear on what his goal was. There was no vagueness about it. He was very specific. The more vague our goals are, whether they're personal or professional, the less chance there is of us achieving them. Tal knew exactly what he wanted to do. Shopping spree, last 6 months of his life, go everywhere, buy everything. He then told somebody about it, his friends. He created accountability. When we tell someone and share a goal with others, we feel accountable. It is the most potent goal-striving, goal-achieving tool that we have in our arsenal, other people. And finally, he just did something about it. He took that first bold step. The key to Tao's success, and many more successes that he's had since in his last 30 years, is that he identified a goal clearly, he told someone about it, and then he did something about it. And I thought, well, this is such an easy framework. Does this apply to anything that I've done? So I looked at my list, and I looked at number 98, which is to get onto a red carpet. I've always wanted to be on a red carpet. I think it's egotistical. It's very shallow, that's for sure. And I was never getting any invites. And so I thought, I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm just going to have to crash the red carpet. So that was my goal, crash a red carpet. I went to Google, I Googled red carpet events, and the first one that popped up was the Cannes Film Festival. For those of you who don't know, it's in the south of France, and it's bigger than the Oscars from a media point of view. And the image on Google was this long red carpet, and it looked amazing, and I thought that'll do. So I then told all my friends that this is what I'm going to try and do. I'm leaving for France in a few days, and I left using my credit card, just like Tao. That was my bold step. This is what happened. How do I get on the red carpet tomorrow?
You have to register.
Would it be laughing at me or impossible? You're the man.
I'm sorry, but market badges are not really bad.
I would never usually admit this, especially not to camera, but I'm actually a little bit worried.
Good luck.
Thank you.
That takes a lot of nerve. I take my hat out to that guy.
Right, feel completely out of place, let's go. I'm trying to get a ticket. Have you got a ticket?
No. Do you have one for us somewhere?
Everyone here is looking for tickets, really, aren't they? The last couple of minutes, things have taken a turn. We thought we could get right up to the side of the red carpet there, which would have been an excellent platform for me to jump the fence. But what we see, we're no longer anywhere near it. In fact, no one is. I found out that Russell Crowe was going to be there, the Australian actor. So I thought if I can get to Russell Crowe, he'd help me. Russell, it's me, Sebastian! Russell, it's me, Sebastian! Can't give me any eye contact. It's just over there. I'll come to me. Sorry. Can I touch the carpet? I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm on the carpet. So would you mind taking a photo? I've lost my cameraman. Okay. Oh, thanks. Thank you. I'm glad you laughed. I think that is a funny story, but I think the reason I share it is because it speaks to something which is true for all of our goals, no matter what they are, again, personal or professional. Usually, a goal takes us to a place that we might not have been before. It's something new, it's novel. And to get there, we have to step away from sort of what we know into this area where we're feeling more discomfort. And in those moments, there's a tendency for us to feel self-doubt, trepidation, anxiety, all of those things. Physically even, we get sweaty palms and our heart rate rises. And although we can't control everything, and if we just take a step back right now and just think about the world at large, the noise of AI, tariffs, the consumer behavior, all of these things, social media, we're not in control of any of that. But the reminder is we are always in control of our actions, of our responses. And when we come together in rooms like this to discuss what is next, it's also very important to understand that we do have full agency over our actions. I tried everything. I tried to get media accreditation. I did nothing work. That sandwich board didn't work. I had to rent that suit in the end for 90 euros. I pushed myself through tens of thousands of people to the front line of the red carpet there. And my last option, as I saw it, was to duck under the fence and just try and sneak across the road. And as I did that, I began sweating profusely because I was just so nervous. I felt my heart pounding against the inside of my chest. I got to the far side of the road, and the final security guard separating me from the red carpet put his hand out and said something to me in French. And I just was so scared, I couldn't even look at him in the eyes. So I just stared at his feet. There was a moment's silence, and then he just repeated himself. At which point, I thought, well, he needs an answer, so I just made some noises. It's gibberish. And for whatever reason, this guy just opened up his arm and ushered me through. And I remember walking, thinking, I can't believe this is working. And I put my left foot on this red carpet, my right foot, and I was on it. And in that moment, I remember feeling euphoric. I genuinely remember buzzing. I felt like the most successful human that's ever graced the planet. Silence. I know I'm not. But if you cast your mind back now to the last thing that you did that was meaningful to you, and do it, what was the last thing that you did that truly mattered to you? Whether it was by yourself, with a family member, with friends, something in the professional realm. What was it? What was the last thing you did that truly mattered to you? And with that in mind, how did you feel in that moment? You probably felt something similar. You probably felt an immense sense of satisfaction, of pride, of accomplishment, of progress. You probably felt unstoppable. And that, I think, is a good indicator that we're on track, that we are living a purpose-driven life, whether it's personal or professional. I was on that carpet for 30 minutes or so, and all the celebrities left. I spoke to a couple of them, but I was the last person at the top of the red carpet on the stairs, now by myself, looking down at tens of thousands of people who were all just staring at me. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have an exit plan. And even the paparazzi lining either side of the red carpet were now focused on me. And I thought, how do I get out of this? And I thought, well, I'll just go back down the stairs to the fence line and I'll disappear. So I walked back down the stairs. Everyone was looking at me. And as I was about to disappear under the fence, somebody gave me a piece of paper and a pen. And at first, I didn't know what to do. But then it became very clear. And I'm sure it was the same thing that you would have done if you were there. I just signed autographs for half an hour, which I don't feel bad about at all. So what is this all predicated on? What was it that allowed Tal to do his thing? And anyone else in your life that you know of who's done something brilliant, and it could be you, what allowed them to do it? The answer is permission. That's the unlock. Permission. A split-second decision any one of us can take to simply think about ourselves and our direction. We live in a very fast-paced world. There is so much happening, AI, etc. So much is happening. We're often being asked to do more with less at a quicker rate. We have to press pause and simply, at first, reflect. It's so important. How did we get here? Through the personal or professional lens. As you sit in the seat, you can think about this. What are the things that have got you to this moment in your life? What are your patterns? What are your behaviors? How have you shown up for yourself? How have you shown up for other people? How did you embrace the good times? How did you navigate adversity? You can't change any of that, but it's important to know how you've shown up. And in this moment right now, how do you feel? Do you feel happy? Do you feel engaged? Do you feel inspired? Or do you feel something different? Whatever the truth is what we're trying to get at. And it's without judgment too. And if you were to continue in the same way that got you to this point here, would that take you to a place where you got to achieve all your goals? If you continued to show up to life in the way that you have up to this point, would it allow you to get to a place where you feel fulfilled? If the answer is yes, fantastic. Go back to the now and just jump in and press play and enjoy that ride. But if not, and we realize in this moment of reflection that something needs to change, even just 1 degree, what a gift to understand that this is the moment to reimagine the path forward. within your families, as a collective professional group in the room right now, the truth often is that we do need to change a few things to achieve the bigger goals, the audacious moonshots that we want. And the reminder is, of course, that yes, it's true, we must keep up internally to the rate of external change, otherwise we get left behind. But I think a far more powerful way of looking at it is we can actually create the change that we need. And that's done through goal setting. Goal setting is the catalyst for positive change. And a question that I love to use as a prompt anyway is, what's on your list? What is on your list? I've asked a few of you outside, but would anyone in the room right now like to just share something that's important to them, a goal they haven't yet achieved? Go. Does anyone in the room have a goal? Yes, sir. Oh, walk to Kilimanjaro. Fantastic. Has anyone in here done that? I did it once. It was awful, but don't let me stop you. It was, it's a great challenge. What else? Surely not just one person in the room with a goal. Yes?
Have more babies.
Have more babies. Wow. How many are you up to right now?
Just one.
Just one.
That's with a beautiful wife, so we're working on that.
Wow. I would usually invite you to start the goal, but I won't. What a fantastic goal and energy. Kilimanjaro, 1 million babies. What else? Who else? One more. That's all we need. Yeah, someone back there? I can't see, but just yell. Run a marathon. Which one? Are you signed up for it? Okay. Would you sign up now? Okay, great. Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Do you know what's interesting about that question, what's on your list, whether it's a marathon, 1 million babies with a beautiful wife, Kilimanjaro, which I support? As soon as you ask somebody what's important to them, what do you dream of, what's important to you, what's your ambition, you turn the conversation from me to you. As people, we all have a huge, profound impact on the people next to us. There's a ripple effect, and we can inspire and influence behavior. And so if we ask the right questions at the right times, I believe that we can also create positive change. In the US right now, 38% of employees feel underappreciated. 77% said they would work harder if they received recognition. Employees who feel valued are 4.6 times more likely to try harder, which is good, of course, for the bottom line of any workplace. Now, I'm not saying this to suggest anyone in here feels like that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if we just zoom out and we stay away from sort of the organizational perspective, but as people, very clearly, this is showing us that as human beings, if we are appreciated, if we are recognized, if we are acknowledged, we perform better, we feel better. That is good for the individual, but it's also good for everyone around us too. So how do we actually create environments where people do feel acknowledged and appreciated and valued? And I do think genuinely it comes down to asking the right questions. I've been working in this world for years with organizations around the world, and we have found that there are 3 questions specifically that do something for energy, for connection, and for progress. And if you're open to it, maybe we could ask the questions right now. Are you open to it? Okay, good, great. We were going to do it anyway, by the way. But the first question is around your goal. I would like everyone in here to just think right now of an important goal, whether it's Kilimanjaro, whether it's babies, whether it's a marathon, whether it's saving for a marathon in the first. What is your goal? What is something, just one thing, that's important to you? It doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be meaningful. It could be personal. It could be professional. It could be selfish. It could be selfless. It could be incredibly complicated. It could be very simple. It could be silly. It could be meaningful. Just in your mind now, think about something that's important to you. And I'm going to get you to turn to the person next to you on your table, and I'm going to ask you to ask them one simple question, which is, what's on your list? Research out of Harvard shows us that if we share one goal, one time, with one person, One goal with one person, just one time, the likelihood of achieving that goal improves by 42%. It's huge. So, if you look at the person on the table next to you, whether you know them or not, you can do it in 2s or 3s if it's easier. And if you're by yourself, find somebody and just say what's on your list. And at 30 seconds, swap. Starting from now. Thank you. Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, please stop. Please stop doing what I asked you to do. Round of applause. I think maybe clapping helps. Yeah. Okay, great. Great. What's happened in the room? What is there a difference? Did I hear energy? Right? Is that true? Do you feel that? Some of you are still talking. It's incredible. I asked you before, 3 minutes ago, share with me a goal, and 3 people slowly shared. In 60 seconds from asking a personal question with curiosity and eye contact, there are still people talking. It's amazing what happens when you actually give someone your presence. So if that's just one question, imagine what a second would do. I'm glad you asked. So the second question is around sharing a truth. And before anyone looks at anyone next to them and says, I've always loved you, it's not that sort of truth. The truth is related to the goal that you just shared. And the question I'd actually like you to ask is, what are you finding hard so far with regard to that goal? If you know the person, you can say, why haven't you done it yet? But we're looking to understand what is stopping somebody right now. So, 1 more minute. Off you go. Thank you. Ten seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Round of applause. Just start clapping when you're done. Great. Okay. It's got louder. How's it got louder? Okay. How are we feeling? Just yell out a word if you feel. Good. I heard good. That's good. What was the other one? Nervous? Oh, why do you feel nervous? Because you're saying it out loud. Is that admitting to something that's holding you back? Would you like to share what yours was? You have a penny whistle and a guitar, and you want to learn to play? And what's stopping you? Well, if you were good at it, you wouldn't need to learn it. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. That's brave. Is there something else that's stopping you then? Is it fear of judgment? Yeah. Wow. Let's do an experiment, just because we're having a nice moment. What's your name?
My name?
Yes. Katie? Peggy. Hi, Peggy. Would you want to stand up for us quickly? Okay, round of applause for Peggy. It's great. So we have a guitar, no, we don't. So Peggy has shared with us that the thing that's stopping her back from learning guitar is a fear of judgment, but I don't think you're alone. If anybody else in this room has ever not done something because they have felt a fear of being judged or a fear of failing, would you also stand up with Peggy? Oh, look at this. Most people, and then a bunch of people who are lying. This is great. Look around. We are all in this together. Hands up if time was the thing that was stopping you from achieving your goal. A bunch of us. Money? Fear of failure? You're already standing. Lack of community or support? Was that true for anybody? Lack of a plan? You can see hands shooting up. You can all sit down. But I think what this proves, and thank you so much, Peggy, for being brave and sharing, is that it's really important, of course, and it's very easy to be together through the good times, to high-five each other and all that. It's more important that when we go through challenge or struggle, to also voice that, because we have a tendency to isolate ourselves and feel a little bit silly about it, or I know I do. When we share our goals and when we share our challenges with people in the same group, whether it's our family or a professional room like this, we suddenly feel supported. That's important. And it lends itself to this idea of accountability being a crucial thing for us to be able to achieve our goals. And that, of course, is the last question that we're leading to now. If we have an accountability partner, somebody who you can talk to ongoingly about the same goal over an extended period of time, the likelihood of that goal coming to life improves by 95%. Wow, exactly. It's crazy. And so the last question I'd like you to ask to the same person for the last minute, thank you for playing along, is quite simply, where do you need support? That's it. Where do you need support? It's the last question, the last minute. Off you go. Thank you. $15 seconds. 10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Round of applause for yourselves. Thank you. Thank you. I love this. There are more people talking. How do we feel? Just yell out how you feel right now. Good. What was that? Empowered. What else? Optimistic. Good. Empowered. Optimistic. I think all of those words are fantastic. Would you also agree you might feel slightly more connected? Is that true? Of course. In a matter of, let's say, 5 minutes in total, you've asked 3 questions and suddenly you feel connected, certainly with the person you've been chatting to, but as a group, because we all know we're going through the same process here. When you say to someone, hey, what's important to you? What's a goal? What's an ambition? What do you hold close to you? You are saying to that person, I want to see you. When you ask that same person, what are you struggling with right now? You are saying to that person, well, I hear you. And as we found with Peggy, me too. I'm not the only one who struggles with a fear of failure or judgment, or I'm not the only person who's trying to get more money to do a marathon, or I'm not the only person who doesn't find enough time in my days to do. We're together. And when you say to that same person, where do you need support? You're saying very clearly, I'm with you. I'm here for you. I see you. I hear you. I'm with you. That is the bedrock of any form of connection. Whether it's your family, whether it's your local geographical community, whether it is your business, whether it's us in the room right now. For progress, we have to connect on this slightly deeper level. And for anyone who feels that they don't do this often enough, you don't have to do this by any means, feel free to scan that QR code. It will ask you to share your goal with me, and I will get back to you in 4 days and just say, how are you doing with your goal? And I have found that over the years, people have not only achieved the goal that they share with me, but they've gone on to achieve many more things. And I'm friends with lots of people now, which is nice. With that said, what's clear, I think, is that when it comes to goals, that they just simply aren't a solo adventure, no matter how much you think they might be. There is a ripple effect that is created that touches the lives of people when we strive for goals. And equally, we can't ever really achieve anything by ourselves. Yes, there are a few examples, but generally speaking, we need community. We do. And an interesting example to showcase this is number 23 from my list. I always wanted to deliver a baby. No? Well, just for anyone who just thinks I'm weird, I wanted to see a human take its first breath on Earth. And so that was that. And I got an email from this lady in the pink, Tara. She's Canadian. And she said, I've been following your journey. I'm due to give birth any moment. If you come to Canada, you can help me deliver my child. And guess what I said? Yes. So I got my credit card out and I flew to Tara's hometown in Canada called Regina. Has anyone been there? You have? What were you doing there? Huh? Truck driving. Oh, you were just going through. Yeah, no one really goes there. So I ended up in this odd town, and which is wonderful, actually, and I met lots of great people. But of course, Tara was so lovely and open and generous, and I helped her every day with groceries. Or we would talk every morning for 2 weeks, and the baby was quite overdue, and she didn't respond to my messages for 2 days in a row. And then finally, via a Facebook message, she said to me, hey, I'm so sorry. I had an emergency delivery. The baby's healthy, which of course I know is the only important thing here. She said, there's nothing I can do for you. The baby's here. If there's anything else I can do for you in Regina, let me know. And who's laughing? And there wasn't. I was very happy for her, but selfishly I was devastated. I was in this oddly named town, and I didn't have a contingency baby to deliver, and I didn't know what to do. But what had happened is that the Canadian media had started following my story, and this show called Canada AM, a morning breakfast show, like a Good Morning America type of thing, contacted me and they said, would you come on the show in the morning? We'd like to interview you about your journey. And I said, sure. So I ended up in this TV studio with lights almost as bright as these ones. And I was sat on the couch next to Seamus, the male anchor of the show. This was a national story in Canada. I don't know how it became national, but it was. And Seamus, this male anchor, was sort of a little bit negative. He didn't have a great energy, and he didn't speak to me. And finally he said, we're going to go live in 3, 2, 1. He said, welcome to the show, Seb. My first question for you is this. You must feel so stupid. And I thought he was sort of joking, but he sort of wasn't. And I just felt really silly. And I tried to be witty to get around it. And I said, I just feel like an irresponsible father. And for 5 minutes, this guy just ridiculed me on national television. Coast to coast, Canada. I just felt stupid. And at the end of the interview, he said, so Seb, thanks for coming in today. My last question for you now is, now that you failed, what are you going to do? And I sat there and I was so confused, and I was also very angry internally. And I thought about his question. In that moment you sort of get on occasions where time just pauses. And I thought about his question live on this interview. Now that you failed, what are you going to do? And I knew instantly that I just didn't feel like I'd failed. I just hadn't done it yet. What I have absolutely learned through my journey is that if there's something that I truly care about, it's anchored to a value, or it gives me purpose, nothing and nobody can stop me getting there. I know that about myself. I've learned that. And if that's true for me, it's of course true for everyone. And I'm sure you have felt that in areas in your life before. When we actually have a purpose-driven goal, a truly purpose-driven goal, we have access to limitless amounts of motivation, clarity, and focus. We become far more engaged. There is a minimization of the perception of obstacles, meaning that if we come to an obstacle and we don't really care about the goal on the other side, we'll stop. If we do care about what's on the other side, we'll keep going. We'll find a way around or over or through. That's what this was for me. And so I looked at Seamus live on television and I said, Seamus, I politely disagree with you. I've come to your wonderful country to deliver a baby. I'm not going to leave until I do. And I said, I also think there's an opportunity here. And before he could say anything, I looked down the barrel of the camera and I said, if there's anyone watching who's 5 centimeters dilated or more, please email me on seb@100things.com. And he ended the interview. We're not friends. I was devastated. I got off stage. I had my laptop there. I hoped to maybe just get a sympathetic email, which I did, but I also got 10 direct offers from families in Regina, all offering me to deliver their children. The first email was from Carmen here in the black. She said, we don't like the way that guy treated you. If you come to my house tonight and meet my entire family, I'm already a week overdue, and we like you, you can help deliver mine. Canadians are so friendly. Yeah. Are you Canadian? So friendly. And guess what I said? Yes. And I ended up in Carmen's backyard meeting her extended family that same night. I had an awkward conversation with the father-to-be who put his arm around my shoulder and he sort of guided me to a darker corner of the yard. It was a barbecue. And he said, hey, nice to meet you. A quick question, where do you think you're going to stand for this thing? And I said, I didn't know what to say. And I said, well, I don't know how to say this. If this is Carmen, your wife, and that's her head, I'm gonna have to be, you know? I'm gonna have to be there. And he paused for a second, he put his beer down, which left me holding a hot dog, and I thought, oh, this is where I get punched in the face. And after it felt like 30 seconds of silence, he finally looked at me and he said, thank God, because I do not want to be there. And so it's what happened. Carmen then walked over and she said, hey, we like you. Whenever I go into labor, we'll give you a call. So they dropped me home at midnight on Friday, same day as this awful TV interview, and I got a phone call 4 hours later, 4 a.m. on Saturday, and she said, get to the hospital. And I did. And moments later, I was feeding Carmen, a complete stranger, chips of ice. That's Dane in the background, the father, just laughing. And we went through this 13-and-a-half-hour delivery together. And at the end of which, there was a very healthy baby boy born called Oakley. And as Oakley came into the world, I literally had one of Carmen's legs over my shoulder. And her other leg was over somebody else's shoulder, who I assume she knew. And there was a midwife. And then as Oakley came out, the midwife gave him to me. And I got to place him on his mother's stomach. And I will tell you that I could not stop crying. It was the most incredible thing I've ever been a part of. There was so much purpose and presence in that moment. But there was also one question, maybe the same question you're wondering now, that I had to ask her. And it was quite simply, why? Why on earth would anybody invite a complete stranger to be involved in the most intimate thing you may ever go through as a couple? And a few hours later, when the time was right, I approached her. She had Oakley on her stomach. And I said, Carmen, I'm so grateful for you having me here. Congratulations to you and your family. But I have to know, why did you invite me? Why did you want to help me? And without missing a beat, Carmen looked at me and she said, passion inspires passion. And it has never left me. Passion inspires passion. There is a huge ripple effect that we create by the way that we show up to our own lives. And that ripple effect has influenced people in your lives your entire life. The way you've shown up to today, this session, has influenced someone in the room, whether you know it or not. And as to whether that is a positive or a negative ripple effect is a choice that you make, consciously or sometimes subconsciously. Imagine if we are able to integrate passion and purpose into the things that we do. Not only would we unlock limitless amounts of motivation and resilience and creativity, resourcefulness in ourselves, but we would unlock those same qualities in the people around us as well. Imagine that community where everyone's passionate, whether it is your family, your local community, or of course, the truth, this room. Of course you're passionate. That's why you're in here. You didn't stumble upon this. You didn't win a raffle. You came here with agency to Hawaii to be in this room because you care about yourselves. You care about your families. You care about the work you do. The work you do touches the lives of millions and millions of people around the world in a positive way. And that work is so important, this idea of connecting with people in a positive way, that it can't be done alone. It has to be done together. We have to come together and change that me and you and turn it into an us. And so how do we do that? Well, we come together, whether it's our families, whether it's our communities, whether it's our businesses or this room, and we must establish what our shared vision is. This is a conversation we can have at any point. What is it? Big picture. What are we all here trying to do? At a very high level, we're just trying to have a positive effect on the people who we're serving. But you can go deeper than that. What is the shared vision? And once we establish that, the question then becomes, well, what's my role and what's your role? How do we come together? Again, very high level, we have ingredients, we have the equipment, we have the physical creation and production, the distribution. Whatever you're doing in this room, we need each other. And only when we understand what the other people around us are doing can we then find the collaborative opportunities. And when we do that, by coming together, just like we're doing today, we then only have to take action. The best example I can think of from my journey that involves this idea of creating an us comes via a story of meeting this guy here called Mark. Mark saw me do a TV interview in Australia where I'm a huge deal. And, and he saw me do an interview. He emailed me a day later and he said, I felt inspired to create my own list of 150 things. Would you come to Melbourne, Australia, and shave my head? It's number 1 on my bucket list. And I said yes, because number 26 on my list is to help a stranger. And so I got to help Mark, in a very easy way, of course. But as I got to meet Mark, I realized that we're so similar. We both have lists, we're both ambitious, we're both a little bit quirky, but physically we're very different. Mark is a quadriplegic, but he wasn't always this way. Mark, in his early 20s, decided to backpack around the world, travel around the world on a shoestring budget, just like I had. At one point, he decided to go to Europe, just like I had. He then decided on one occasion to go to Italy, just like I had. But unlike me, Mark got bitten by a tick whilst in Italy. And that tick gave Mark Lyme's disease. And that Lyme's disease, within 6 months, changed Mark's life forever. He went from being able-bodied, as I am right now, into a quadriplegic. No ability to move a muscle in his body. Mark cannot speak. His carer, who was telling me this in person, was explaining to me that the emails Mark and I were having in preparation to meet in person were done so through a laser tracker on his forehead that would track his eye movement on a giant digital screen at the end of his bed. It would take him a day to write me an email, but he was doing it every day, long, lengthy emails. When I was shaving his head, hearing about this tragic story, I remember looking into Mark's eyes and I remember thinking, this poor guy, I don't know what to, he must be going through so much. What a tragic story. But I looked into his eyes and he looked like the most successful person in any room. Mark, without the ability to move a muscle in his body, had complete agency in his life. Incrementally, he dictated what he would do every single day. He was connected to people because he was vulnerable. He was fully expressed through his list, and he had devised his life in a way that had true meaning because he had created a meaningful list. And I had never felt this good before. I was helping somebody in a way that I just hadn't. And I looked at Mark and I said, what else can I do? I can do more than this. Mark looked at me and he tried to say something and I couldn't understand him. And his carer said, oh, Mark's always wanted to complete a half marathon. And I didn't know what to think. And I took a step back and I looked at Mark in his heavy wheelchair and I just didn't get it. And I said, that's cool. How can I help you? And Mark looked at me and he said 2 words, the first 2 words I ever understood from Mark, and they were, push me. I have never wanted to run a half marathon. But I will tell you, I have never had a moment in my life where more instantly I became obsessed with something. That's the absolute truth. Even as I say that, I remember how I felt. Completely, 100% out of control, obsessed about the idea of doing this with Mark. And so I got my phone out of my pocket. I signed us up instantly for the Melbourne Half Marathon. I went back home to Sydney, where I lived at the time. I'm now in LA. I got a shopping cart from a grocery store, and I just began doing laps of my beach like a crazy person with a shopping cart for 2 months before flying back to Melbourne to take part in the greatest thing I've ever done in my life.
I guess I just woke up to a different day. In a different way. And you were never to know that your red light was my cue to go. And you were never to see. So I'm cleaning out the rooms of my head and heart, and I'm digging up the boxes I had hidden away, and I'm laying them all out, and I've made a lot of the things I said I'd do on another day. 'Cause there are 100 things that I wanna do, and there are 100 things, but I'm scared to. But if there is anything I have learned from you, is that another day now could be too late. So I won't wait.
Thank you. The greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And Mark says the same thing from his perspective. As people, very clearly, we're here to connect with one another. We have the ability, we have the desire, just often we're not sure how, until we start asking people what's important to them. Mark and I have become very good friends. He sent me an email a day after, which I thought was just going to be a thank you email. It was in part, but he then said, hey, I found a bike race we should enter, which we didn't win. The most incredible thing about this day, though, was not the fact that we finished. I could say it was the fact that we started, but even more so than that for me was what happened just after we started. 10 yards into it, other people, competitors who've been training for however long to get their best times, etc., saw what we were doing. And so clear was our shared vision that strangers decided to just help us. Strangers decided and just started to join us. People were pushing Mark, people were pushing me so I could push Mark. And by the end of the race, it had turned from a story of me and one other, Mark, into a story of us. There were 40 people as we crossed the finish line, all pushing Mark. That's why you're in this room right now, because you have your equivalent, personally and professionally. And the way that we're able to connect and really unlock limitless possibility is through genuine connection, human connection. I wish my story didn't start with Chris dying. That's my truth, though. And his loss inspired me to look at myself in a way that was truly important. I needed it. But the truth is, we've all gone through loss. We've all had adversity. We've all been through these darker moments in our lives, personally and professionally. We don't need to wait any longer. If you haven't already, this is the moment. And as we get to spend this precious time with us together on a beautiful island, this is the moment of permission to pause, connect with each other, and decide what happens next. And once we identify what that is, we just need to take action. And I guarantee if you ask one person in this room what's important to them before your time's out, and that you actually say, hey, I'd like to support you, magic will happen. And that's how we make this world a better place, and it's how we best serve people in our lives who we're meant to. So thank you so much for listening to my story. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.